Imagine this. A king sits on his throne, surrounded by gold, silence, and absolute authority. Every man in the room bows, every voice lowers, every decision seems to belong to him. But then he leans just slightly, not forward, not toward his people, but toward a man standing beside him, a man with no crown, no army, no title that echoes through history. And yet he speaks, quietly, so quietly, no one else can hear. The king listens, and in that moment, something changes. A war begins. A man is condemned. A kingdom shifts direction. But here's the unsettling truth. The king did not decide. He only agreed. So let me ask you, if the most powerful man in the kingdom listens instead of decides, who is really in control? Who shapes the thoughts behind the throne? Who turns doubt into action and fear into command? And the most dangerous question of all, if you were the king, would you even realize you were being guided? Or would you believe every decision was your own? Stay with us, because today we are stepping into one of the most powerful and most invisible roles in medieval history. Welcome to Whispers of the Middle Ages, where we uncover the strange, the hidden, and the unsettling stories from a world where power was never as simple as it seemed. We publish new stories every day, revealing the lives behind the throne, the shadows behind the crown, and the truths history rarely tells. Make sure to subscribe and join us, because some of the most powerful stories are the ones you never noticed. To understand advisors in medieval Europe, you must first understand something simple and dangerous. No king ruled alone. A kingdom was too large, too complex, too unpredictable. Messages took days, sometimes weeks, to arrive. News changed as it traveled. Truth bent, twisted, reshaped. And yet, decisions had to be made quickly. Wars could not wait. Enemies would not pause. Power had to be maintained. So, the king needed something he could not create himself. Perspective, knowledge, guidance. And that is where the advisors came in. At first glance, their role seems harmless. They were there to help, to suggest, to inform. But advice is never neutral. Every word carries weight. Every suggestion carries intention. Because an advisor does not just give information. He chooses what information to give. Imagine this. A king asks, "Is there a threat?" One advisor says yes. Another says no. Both may be telling the truth. But each truth leads to a different future. One leads to war, the other to peace. And the king? He must choose which version of reality to believe. Advisors came from different worlds. Some were nobles, born into power, raised in politics, trained to influence. Others were members of the church, educated, respected, and believed to speak with moral authority. Some were warriors, men who had seen battle and understood strategy. Others were scholars, men who understood law, diplomacy, and history. Each brought something valuable, but each also brought something dangerous: bias, ambition, fear, because no advisor was empty of desire. Some wanted to protect the kingdom, others wanted to protect themselves, and some wanted to control everything, without ever being seen. This is what made advisors so powerful. They did not need the throne. They only needed access to it, and access was everything. To stand beside the king was to stand beside power. To be heard by the king was to shape reality. To be trusted by the king was to become invisible authority. But influence is a subtle thing. It does not shout, it whispers. An advisor rarely says, "Do this." Instead, he says, "Perhaps this is the safer choice." Some might see this as a threat. It would be wise to consider carefully chosen words, soft, reasonable, persuasive. And slowly, the king begins to think. He has reached the decision on his own. That is the true art of advising, not controlling openly, but guiding quietly. But not all advisers were loyal. Some used their position to manipulate, to hide information, to exaggerate threats, to remove rivals. A single rumor could destroy a man's life. A single suggestion could start a war. And the king would never know where the idea truly came from, because the adviser does not leave fingerprints. Now imagine being inside the royal court, a place filled with tension. Every word is watched, every glance is noticed. Every silence means something. Advisers did not just serve the king, they competed with each other for attention, for trust, for influence. Because in that environment, being ignored was as dangerous as being wrong. Some advisers rose quickly. They became favorites. Men the king trusted above all others. They were always present, always heard, always close. But this closeness came with risk, because favor is fragile. A single mistake, a single accusation, a single shift in mood, and everything could collapse. History is filled with advisers who rose to incredible power, only to disappear just as quickly. Removed, exiled, executed. Because when you stand too close to power, you also stand close to danger. And then there were the advisers of the church. These men held a unique position. They did not just speak of strategy. They spoke of morality, of right and wrong, of divine will. In a deeply religious world, this mattered. A king could ignore a noble, but could he ignore God? This gave religious advisers incredible influence. They could shape decisions not just through logic, but through belief. They could say, "This action is just," or "This action will bring consequences beyond this world." And suddenly, the decision became heavier, more complex, more dangerous to ignore. But even this power could be used, because when someone claims to speak for something greater, who can truly challenge them? Life as an advisor was not easy. It required intelligence, awareness, control. You had to know when to speak, when to stay silent, when to agree, when to resist. You had to read the king, understand his fears, his doubts, his desires, because the most effective advisor does not just give advice. He gives the advice the king is ready to hear. And that is where it becomes dangerous, because truth can be adjusted, not fully changed, but shaped, framed, delivered in a way that leads to a specific outcome. And over time, the king begins to depend on this. He listens more, questions less, trusts deeply and slowly, without realizing it. He is no longer deciding alone. He is deciding through someone else. So, now let me ask you, if you were an advisor, what would you do? Would you tell the truth, even if it costs you your position? Would you protect the kingdom or protect yourself? Would you guide or control? And if you were the king, would you trust easily, or would you question every word? Would you notice manipulation, or would you only see guidance? Because in the end, the greatest power in the medieval world was not the sword, not the crown, not even the law. It was influence, quiet, invisible, untraceable, the kind of power that changes everything, without anyone noticing. If you found this story fascinating, don't forget to subscribe to Whispers of the Middle Ages. We bring you daily stories from the medieval world, stories of power, mystery, and the hidden forces that shaped history. Because sometimes the most powerful voices are the ones you never hear.